So you have to go to Google and search for SQL Server Management Studio. Okay, so once you get into this link, so here you will find the, just click on free download for SQL Server Management Studio. So you can install this as well. If you have the Azure account and if you have the Azure SQL. Since I have the Azure SQL, I'm just install the Management Studio and connect it there. If you don't want the Azure version, also that is fine. So you can basically try to uh, get the setup from the Shiva and then try to install in your machine. Okay, by tomorrow. Okay, so this is the plan. So if you have any doubts, so you can ask before we go and start the skill basics for today. No, I don't suggest to use. What is your question? Workbench. Can you come again? Can you speak, Mohammed?
Yes, and I like do we are having Workbench already installed in our like laptops, so can we use that or we need?
Yeah, you can use. If you already have it, you can use.
Okay.
No issues. Okay. So if you don't have it, you can ask Shiva. He will provide you the SQL Server setup and help you installing that SQL Server in your machine. Okay.
Okay. No.
Okay. So this is one thing. Okay. So now to start with, in the SQL Server, so you can see two informations. One is SQL Server and another one is database. If you open this database, so if you want to store some data in this database, so you will be storing in the form of tables, right? So what is, that how we can create that table? Okay. So while creating the table, what type of data that you want to store, whether you want to store character data or whether you want to store integer data or you want to store the data in decimals. So all those things that we need to define. And also, apart from this, we have also defined the constraints in the SQL, right? So first thing is, so we will be having in the SQL, we have kind of DDL and DML commands. Okay. So what is the abbreviation of DDL? Data definition language. What is the abbreviation of DML? Data manipulation language. Okay. So we have under DDL means, for suppose, data definition language means what type of data that you want to store. So we will define using this DDL commands. So what are all DDL commands that are available? Create, alter, drop, and truncate. Right? So what are all DML commands means you will modify the data. So after you define what type of data that you want to store, right? So you have inserted some, you want to insert some data, you want to update some data, you want to delete some data. So that will be happen using the commands like insert, update and delete. Insert, update and delete, right? So we are going to discuss about this, right? So apart from this, so once you, okay, assume like you have, so you are trying to create the table, right? So what type of data that you want to store? So for that, we have to define the data types. So data types like we have like varchar, nvarchar, integer, float, decimal, numeric, bit, right? So these are all like date, date time. So these are all very common used data types. Of course, other than this, we have like char, nchar. There are some of them are there. So we will discuss as and when needed. While creating the table, you have to define the data types as well. And also while creating the table, so there is a concept called as constraints. Constraints in the SQL Server, right? So what are all constraints that we have in the SQL Server? So we have like primary key constraint, foreign key constraint, right? And we have check constraint, not null constraint, default constraint, and unique constraint. Unique constraints. So these are all basically the basic things when you are trying to create a table. So while creating the table, we will also see what is identity property in the SQL Server. Okay. What is identity property? So we'll deep dive into this identity property. Right. This is our agenda for next, next couple of days. And, we will slowly dig into the different concepts. So after this, after we, okay, assume like you have created the table, you have inserted the data, and while creating, you have used different constraints, identity, blah, 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 blah. Now, you want to, um, select the data, right? I want to see the data within the table. I want to see the data within the table. So how can I see that? So I will use like select, right? Select command to see the data, right? So we'll discuss about that after we discuss this. So we will use kind of, so within the select, while selecting the data, so we will see different clauses. What are all different clauses? Different clauses like where clause. Where clause will be used to filter the data. And within that, we will also see group by, okay, order by, right? And so while selecting the data, so we will be kind of, having different concepts. So while selecting the data, we will be discussing about different concepts, right? So the most important concepts that we will discuss is substring, char index, cast, convert, L trim or R trim, right? And case statement. So we will see about case statement, right? And also we will be discussing about date functions, some of the important function like format, date diff, date part, right? These are all some of them. Of course, there are some, so I will discuss about those as well. And after that, after we get to know, so we will be discussing about the giants in the SQL Server. There are different giants like inner giant, left giant, right giant, full outer giant, cross giant, and self giant. So we'll discuss about all these giants along with these examples. So giants are the heart of the SQL Server. So without understanding the giants, you will not get the SQL Server. So that's why my focus is most of the times when I am giving the scenarios, I will focus more on giants. Along with the giants, I will cover all these concepts, right? So after we get to know the giants, so I will introduce some of the key concepts like common table expression. Common table expression. Common table expression, table variable, and temporary table. So we will see like how we can create them. Also, we have like set operators in the SQL Server. What are all set operators? We have like intersect, union, or except. So these are all the set operators that we will basically discuss. And apart from this, also, so after we cover this, we will see what are all subqueries are there. So subqueries are like, there are two types of subqueries, simple subquery and correlated subquery. So we will see what is the difference between all this, right? And after we cover all this, so the next important thing is, so we will discuss about stored procedure, right? Stored procedure and view, stored procedure, view, and function. And we will see like where we will exactly use this function in the stored procedure with some real-time examples. Okay, for all this we will see with the real-time example where exactly we will call this function, how we can call, in which situations we will use the function, right? So how we can create this view, all this we will discuss. So within the stored procedure, we can apply different things like transactions. We can perform error handling. After that, okay, we can also do like, so within the cursor, within the procedure, we can also use cursors sometimes. So we will see